The villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.
All right, greetings and welcome to another Villain of the Month stream. I'm your host, Sigma Jones. The regular co-hosts are here as well. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Hope you all are doing well this Sunday evening or Monday morning, depending on where you're listening in around the world. So we got a good one for you all today. So the villain of the month is General Zod. And for those who don't know who General Zod is, we will definitely get some more details of him right when we get into this. But before we get started, let me introduce the gentleman that I think is going to help us get this rolling with the stream, and definitely from the comic side of things. They know more about this character than I do, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. So started off, got my good sir off to the right hand side of me, and that is Mr. Lawrence Guy. All right, how's it going, good sir?
Shalom, shalom. Hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to everyone on the panel. And for those of you who are tuning in, as you can see, the old folks have got this one. We sent the young ones off. They out there, doing their Halloween candy and stuff like that. We might we might let them back in if they're not too hopped up on chocolate,
Oh boy, I don't even know what to say to that. I'm just
I always got to start something.
I know, but it's just like, man, he just came out swinging today. He said, "I got a bone to pick with you youngest." All right, well, shalom, good sir, good to have you back as well. And then up next is I guess you could say his partner in crime, and that is Mr. Logic's finest.
I'm so disappointed, Ichigo. So very disappointed. Sadly, your sword exhibits only fear. When you counter, it's because you fear being killed. When you attack, you fear killing. And when you try to protect someone, you fear you could let them die. The only thing that your sword speaks of is senseless fright. And that's not good. What you do not need in battle is fear. Nothing will come of it. You counter, you don't let them cut you. If you protect someone, you don't let them die. When you attack, you kill.
Mr. Logic's finest. How's it going, good sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Two things. First off, Mr. Terrific. Always been a fan because he has that keen intellect.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you, sir. I try my best.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. All praises due, sir. All praises due. And lastly, I'll be really short and brief. Kneel before Zod.
All right, so I think, and
You
definitely,
know, you know, you,
oh,
you
go
know
ahead,
what's
Lawrence.
funny about that? I was gonna do Neil before Guy, you know, and I thought that might be too much. That might be too much. I thought that might be too much. I did. So, but thank you.
It is going to be a fun one tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right into it because I know we're really jumping on the bits on this. So, General Zod. For anybody who is a Superman fan or even just a DC Comics fan, that name should be very synonymous when you think of Superman or just the DC universe in general. General Zod is pretty much everything that Superman is. General Zod is the opposite. And I will admit, from my growing up, I mainly known General Zod from the animated series Superman that played in the 90s and early 2000s. And so that was my understanding of who General Zod was, what was his intent and purposes and whatnot. And I have to admit, from watching him back in the days, he was definitely a character. As I got older, I start to truly understand what he was really all about. But we're going to go into more deeper details of him tonight, and especially because our good friends up here, Lawrence Guy and Logic Finest, they are well in depth when it comes to the comics. And so they can give more of a deep dive on General Zod. And we'll do some more talking about his beliefs and his strategies, and even some like a famous speech that Isaac Sama gave me that we'll watch later on. So to start off, I'm gonna go with Lawrence Guy. What is your, I guess for you, General Zod, what has been your interpretation of him back in the day?
Well, I've got multiple interpretations because, as we've talked about before, there's so many variations in the comics.
Mm,
Um, a lot of people today, what they see when they look at General Zod is not the original General Zod. The original General Zod was a bald-headed, clean-shaven dude, much like Lex Luthor, actually.
mm,
That first popped up in I know it was Adventure Comics. I think it was 1961, if I remember correctly. Adventure Comics 1961. Sorry, I can't remember the exact issue number right now. Um, but yeah, he when he first appeared, he was a bald-headed dude. I think the reason they changed him in animation and in movies and stuff like that is because people didn't want to confuse him with Lex Luthor. Um,
mm.
the in the original concept, there really wasn't much to him. He was just a standard, villain of the month character, megalomaniac, want to rule the world, the normal stuff, so to speak. Um, what he became after, um, I think after John Burns' run in the late '80s is when he really started to take on some depth, in my opinion.
86
Uh,
with the Man of Steel series.
Right, right, right. But even with that, after the Man of Steel series with Byrne, of course, he went into the regular, monthly run with Superman, and he still introduced the old version, who actually Superman killed, actually, which is kind of funny looking at the parallels to what happened in Man of Steel, the movie. Um, but But yeah, but after Burns' run, when they introduced the Zod that everybody's used to now, um, like I said, I think the Zod we have now is far better, a far better character than the version prior. From his motivations, um, moving from somebody who's simply m- maniacal just for the sake of power to someone who actually whose singular purpose is the propagation and protection of Krypton as a whole. In his own words, he was bred for this, you know. And that's where I'm going to end right there. Give Logics a chance to start jumping there.
Yeah. You made reference to his physical appearance. So yeah, that was sometime in the '60s. So when Superman the Motion Picture came out, Terrence Stamp became the definitive General Zod with the goatee and the black hair.
Actually, yes,
So,
you're correct. That's exactly where it started. You're absolutely correct. I forgot about that. That is correct.
so,
Yeah.
so then you also made mention of John Byrne, who, as I said a few weeks ago, in my opinion, the greatest comic book artist of all time. Just my opinion, and he's
Well,
legend.
we'll have that Burn Perez argument later.
No worries, no worries. So then came, of course, the '86 Man of Steel series. So at some point, because originally, again, General Zod was just a empty character. He was a megalomaniac. He just wanted power. He wanted to rule Krypton. He wanted to rule the world, the known world. That was that. So eventually, we were introduced to Drew Zod. His name was changed from just General Zod to Drew Zod, the same way that
That's correct.
Kal-El is Kal from the House of El, and his father is Jor-El, Jor of the House of El. Drew Zod became Drew from the House of Zod, and that's when he started gaining depth. So he was no longer, because originally he was just the opposite of Superman originally, but with the introduction and creation of Drew Zod, he changed. That's when he was no longer a megalomaniac out to rule the world. As you said, he was literally bred for the protection of Krypton. So over the decades, more and more backstory of Krypton was created, because really no one had anything to work with. So they just started creating more backstory, more backstory. So the House of Zod, they were in the military. Drew Zod eventually became the supreme commander of all Kryptonian defense forces. His belief was to mirror Megatron. Everything is for the protection and betterment of my people. Everything that I do is first and foremost for the protection and betterment of my people. So everything that I do is for their benefit. There's nothing that I do for my benefit. So you see, he has much more motivation. There's much more depth to him. He's no longer an evil maniac. And also, he was trained from birth to be a soldier. He is a warrior. General Zod is superior to Superman in all forms and aspects of fighting. However, Superman has lived his entire life under a yellow sun. So whenever General Zod would get freed from the Phantom Zone, he was physically much weaker than Superman. So in a straight up fight, he couldn't beat him. But if they were both under a red sun, it would not even be a contest, because Superman is not a fighter. He never learned how to fight. He always relies on his brute strength. So bringing it back to Zod, he is a military strategist. He is a brilliant tactician, and everything that he does from a military standpoint and even to a social standpoint has always been for the betterment and preservation of Krypton and its peoples.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Brother Eisen.
Hey,
Yes,
guys.
the Dark Lord has come through on tonight.
All creatures need to obey. No one can survive without trusting someone they feel is better, more worthy than themselves. to avoid that responsibility. Those who are worthy look even higher, searching for more superior beings. And those superiors do the same, looking for even stronger individuals they can believe in. That is how all kings are created. It is also how gods are born.
Mr. Isaac Saba, how's it going, sir?
What's good? What's good? Just a little tired, just getting in from work. So, but it's going good.
All right, because we already told everybody out there doing Halloween stuff early. Y'all come up in here hopped up on chocolate. We got problem.
Yeah, no, I don't do the Halloween. I pulled about 13 a day. So,
Oh wow. Well, it's okay. That's okay. That's why we got altruism on timeout.
Oh my goodness.
He's in the chat. He's in the chat. He's just gonna listen today, but after the chocolate thing, ends, he'll be all right. We'll see.
Right on.
I'm telling you, that man's gonna come up here with so many jokes and tear me up. I swear.
I'm gonna wait till we get a little bit further into the discussion, because I think it's gonna have more meaning as we go further into the discussion, because there have been 3 iterations of General Zod, specifically Drew Zod, that really stand out the most, that really give the most insight into who this character has become over time. But we have time for that.
Right on. So, Isaac Saba, you had came in at the right point, because we were just asking, roundtable, as far as what we thought of General Zod, and what was our interpretation of his philosophy, either through comics or through animation or any other sources that you heard of General Zod. So, kind of give us, what was your thoughts about him?
I would say, the earliest iterations of him, he was just a villain. He had no purpose other than to be a villain for the story. They really didn't do anything as far as giving him anything except just to be opposite Superman. But I think I may be wrong, but I'm thinking it was after Michael Shannon's portrayal where they really started to go into giving the character more depth, as far as having a purpose instead of just being a villain, an irredeemable villain. They actually gave him a purpose, which anyone that saw Man of Steel, how he talked about doing what is best for the sake of Krypton was his purpose. Doing what was needed for the people, and I guess I'll go into the earliest part of that particular movie anyways, is how you see how he and Jor-El, they're in like minds of that. The problem that the council has in its judgment, but ultimately they became at odds because of how to go about trying to drastically change things that Krypton needed to change. Jor-El was far more tolerant and peaceful, but ultimately, I believe that Jor-El was actually, well, I don't have to believe it. According to the lore and what happened, Jor-El was ultimately wrong, because what he wanted to do, they just did not have the time to do it. I actually believe that if Zod had of been successful in this coup and enforced rationing of supplies and everything, that it could have spared them and saved millions of more Kryptonians. But I really think that how they changed him after because of Michael Shannon's portrayal, it really gave the character a whole lot of depth, and it gave him a point of view where you could easily understand why he did things the way he did, and it, you know, it may have been harsh, but he wasn't wrong.
Okay, so I understand everything that you said, Eisen.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, for you, for your
Right.
knowledge, that was Man of Steel. General Zod was changed in '86 when John Byrne started his Man of Steel series. That's when we started seeing his iteration as Drew Zod, the son of Lord Zod, and Jack Sor, the scientist, destroyed the planet, the moon, Wegthor, and that created some ecological problems on the planet. And from that instance, Jor-El and Zod and the council started not seeing things eye to eye. So the depth and the nuance and the purpose of which you speak actually goes all the way back to the mid '80s.
Okay, that's why I said correct me if I'm wrong. I
Mhm.
know I had done some research, and from stuff I had been seeing, it was saying that you see more of the depth of the character with Michael Shannon. But that's why I said, you know, correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
Well,
You
no, no,
know. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
yeah, no, you were pretty on point. It's just about nuance, and
Mhm.
again, as always, there's so many interpretations
Right,
over the years of the character. So I mean, you
Mhm.
weren't wrong.
right.
Right.
I do want to point out one thing, if I could. And it's an interesting thought. But we have to remember that we can sit here and we can talk about Drew Zod and Kal-El being enemies, but the truth of the matter is, based on the current history, he Zod is actually Jor-El's enemy. He's just
Right.
carrying over the frustration from Jor-El onto Kal-El.
Right.
And I think one of the strangest things about it is that, as a scientist, Jor-El wanted the same thing that Zod did, just they were executing it differently. And it
Right.
always makes you wonder what would have happened if they teamed up together. Because Jor-El being the leading scientist and Zod being the leading military person, if they had just put their personal differences aside, they could have saved the entire planet, and or at least the bulk of it in some shape, form, or fashion. But again, ego always plays a part, and that's not just an ego thing on Zod's aspect. It's
With
also
Jarrell
an
too.
ego. Yeah, it's also an ego point on Jarrell as well. So that's an interesting that's an interesting aspect to remember as well. Because like I said, what we know Zod as Superman's enemy. But the truth of the matter is, this started long before
With
Superman was
his
even
You know
born.
father,
what?
right?
I was gonna say too. Um, I would agree. I agree with that up until the point of Man of Steel, um, because in that moment when he came up on that ship and Zod went into his mind, it was clear that they were going to be enemies no matter what, because of what he had to do for Krypton, and the fact that even though by genetics Cal was Kryptonian, he was an Earthling for all of his
No, no,
life.
no, no, no. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because you can make you're absolutely right, because that same distinction can be made in the comics as well.
Okay.
Because when Zod showed up, his whole thought process was, okay, well, this is a nice looking planet. I'll just take it and we'll start all over again here. So I mean, yeah, it's the same it's the same analogy, whether
Well,
it be film or comic. So you're on the right you're on the right road, no question.
well, Lawrence brings up a brilliant point because after after the moon was destroyed, Wegthor, the council outlawed space travel. Jarrell's point was we are one of the greatest we are one of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. Why do you want us to cut ourselves off from everyone else? That makes no sense because our future is not solely here on our home planet. It is out in the galaxy. Our star is dying. It's going to be a few more million years, but our star is closer to the end of its life. So what are you doing? So Lawrence brings up a brilliant point that it was not in Jor-El's nature, maybe because he was a scientist, but had Jor-El teamed up with General Zod,
Mhm.
things probably could have had a completely different outcome.
Yeah.
And we
I,
and we
oh, my
see
bad.
we see. Oh, I'm sorry, Eisen.
I was just gonna say too that I think also because of Jarrell's nature, as far as wanting to be more diplomatic about the process and trying to gently lay it upon the public, is why it ultimately failed, because people are very resistant to extreme necessary changes. People are not willing to sacrifice. Um, let me word this right. They're not willing to sacrifice from their own comforts. Now they're much willing to sacrifice everyone else's, but not from their own. Uh, which is why I'll continue to say that Zod was right. But go ahead,
What
Lawrence.
the
So,
inter- what the interesting part is, is that the comment I made about what would happen if the two of them had teamed up, we actually had that happen. Because in the standard continuity of comics, the Daxamites are living proof of that. What a lot of people don't
Mm,
understand is the Daxamites are actually ancient relatives of Kryptonians
Hmm.
who literally used space flight, took off to another planet, and then decided once arriving at that planet, they were going to become isolationists. so
Hmm.
and not allow any more space travel or anybody from other planets to come to them. So we actually do have an example of that. And for those who don't know, Daxamites are the people of Mon-El from the Legion of Superheroes,
Yep.
who have all the same abilities as a Kryptonian would under the yellow sun. The only difference in the power scale is their weakness. Kryptonians are weak to kryptonite. um Daxamites are vulnerable to lead, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly.
yeah, I believe
So
you're right.
so what I want to do, because this is a great topic and everything. So I shared an article in the chat that actually talks about the differences between General Zod and Jor-El and the rivalry they had between them. And so I thought this would be a good starting point to really kind of go more into depths of what was it they had going on Krypton, even before Superman's time. So this
by the
article,
way
mhm.
by the way, thank you for this. I didn't know about this site. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a site called modernmythologies.wordpress, and they have a section called Diametrically Opposed, where they actually talk about the differences between the heroes and the villains for a different series and all. And they had a great article about General Zod that I was like, hey, let me include this in because it actually goes more into depths about their rivalry. It talks about Jor-El as well, as far as like his belief from the scientific point of view and why he found out that Krypton was about to explode and all he was trying to do to correct it. And then it goes into General Zod, and that's where I wanted to start off with tonight to kind of give the audience a little bit more in depth about General Zod. So it starts off by saying the military leader of the planet Krypton, General Drew Zod, is one in a long line of Zods to serve in the Kryptonian army. When Jor-El spoke out about the impending destruction of Krypton, Zod was one of the few who actually heeded his warning. But unlike Jor-El, who hoped to evacuate or save the planet through scientific means, Zod sought to use the news of the planet's doom to overthrow the Kryptonian Science Council and take control of the government. Zod and his forces succeeded in killing some members of the council, but were eventually stopped and overtaken. They were originally to be sentenced to death, but the punishment was commuted thanks to the intervention of Jor-El, who advocated for a lesser punishment than death in exchange for his silence regarding the fate of Krypton. The conspirators were therefore sentenced to the Phantom Zone, banished to the Pocket Dimension prison by Jor-El himself. Feeling betrayed, Zod declared Jor-El a coward and threatened both him and his future son, Kal-El. Many years after the destruction of Krypton, General Zod would make good on his promise, escaping the Phantom Zone and battling Superman. In many of their battles, Zod has attempted to remake Krypton, sometimes on Earth, and position himself as the ruler, but he is always thwarted by the Man of Steel. General Zod is a master military tactician and strategist, as well as being a fierce hand to hand combatant. He is a master of several forms of armed and unarmed combat, a trained pilot, and possesses innumerable other military skills and training. Since escaping the Phantom Zone, Zod has been exposed to Earth's yellow sun, activating all the same Kryptonian powers that Superman possesses: super strength, super speed, invulnerability, heat vision, X ray vision, freeze breath, vortex breath, telescopic vision, and etc. So, next it goes into the rivalry, and this is where it gets interesting. So, it says the rivalry between Jor-El and General Zod has, in many ways, been raging for generations. The House of Zod had always been the caretakers of the Krypton's military, and were at one point the government of the entire planet through the ruling military council. This ended when the Zods lost the confidence of the population thanks to the campaigning of Bob Zor-El. The supplanting of the Zods by Bob Zor-El was a defining moment in Krypton's history, as it replaced a policy of war, as represented by the House of Zod, with a policy of scientific discovery, represented by the House of El. The Kryptonian Science Council took power and reduced the military to peacekeeping duties on the planet. From that point onward, there is an inherent tension between the houses of El and Zod. One is defined by thought, philosophy, and inward reflection, while the other strikes outward, is aggressive, and is defined by action. And though both Jor-El and General Zod had children, neither took up the vocations of their lines, which in essence makes Jor-El and Zod the final inheritors of the legacies of their respective houses. This is most obviously demonstrated by their responses to the discovery of Krypton's imminent destruction. While Jor-El did try several times to warn the Science Council, he eventually submitted to their will. Knowing that his reason and argumentation was falling on deaf ears, he switched tactics and remained silent while he worked on his own plans. Zod, by contrast, was immediately and defiantly vocal in support of Jor-El's findings, taking upon himself to commit acts of murder and treason when he was met with resistance from the ruling council. Zod took the route of action, arguably at the expense of thought, whereas Jor-El walked the path of reason. And in the case of the few documented definitive actions taken by Jor-El, they were undertaken from a place of utter selflessness. It was at the urging of Jor-El that Zod and his followers were spared the death sentence, though it meant that Jor-El could no longer speak the truth about the planet's doom. He owed no particular allegiance to Zod, yet still begged the council to save his life by sending them to the Phantom Zone. Likewise, when he realized that his calculations were wrong and there were only days before the planet exploded, he did not give up hope. He built a small rocket, finished engineering the hyperdrive engine, and found a suitable destination planet for his son, knowing that he and Lara could not go too. As for Zod, his desire to save Krypton, though genuine, is tainted by his equal ambition and power mongering. He tried to use the planet's dire state opportunistically to seize power for himself, with the general safety and future of Krypton a secondary consideration. And instead of viewing the Phantom Zone as a mercy granted by Jor-El, Zod saw betrayal. Whether or not the zone is a worse fate than death is up for debate, but the intention with which Jor-El advocated for it was nevertheless lost on General Zod. Gentlemen, feel free to give your thoughts.
So, so again, we both, Lawrence and I have expounded upon the basics. So here is the point at which I want to delve into the background story and the nuance through the John Byrne series, Man of Steel, which was in '86. Drew Zod, General Zod's belief was, Krypton has to survive at all costs. That's what he was literally bred for. So he disagreed with Jor-El. His belief was, listen, the council is wrong. Clearly, the planet is at risk. As the leading scientist, as the head of the scientific order, if you align with me as the head of the military, we can save our people. Why should we sacrifice Krypton and sacrifice all of our people under the guise of civility and society? It may be harsh, it may be brutal, but Krypton will survive. If we overthrow the council and take the steps necessary, control the government, enact plans and actions to ensure the survival of Krypton. And if we can't save Krypton, we can at the very least relocate every Kryptonian. So our race and our technology and our art, our history, our culture, everything will survive. And if you, Jor-El, will not help me in doing so, one, you are a fool. And two, you become my enemy because you are refusing to help me save our people.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, at the end of the day, extreme extremist or not, his primary goal, and again, it makes no difference what iteration or version of him you want to pick. It's about the survival and sustainability of his people, which at the end of the day, I don't think anybody would have a disagreement with that. um, so yes, like yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And like I said, the issue, like I said, with when it comes to Superman, is that at the end of the day, we have to be honest. How, where can I put this? It's like I said, the real fight with Zod has to do with Jor-El.
Right.
And from an and not to be funny, but he's kind of in a female frame where where
Mm,
where it's one of those things that he's mad because Superman's father didn't side with him and do what was necessary, so we lost everything. So here you are, and your job is supposed to protect Kryptonians, but yet you want to kill another Kryptonian because his father didn't agree with you. That's really all we have here.
Exactly.
I, I'm gonna expound on that, Lawrence, but I'm gonna
Yeah,
let
yeah, yeah.
Isaac. I'm gonna go before I continue.
Uh, yeah, I was just going. There's not a whole lot to really add, but I think uh, that y'all two summed it up perfectly about about how everything he did. It was reason behind it, and the reason was for the preservation of Kryptonians.
See, because um, once the Man of Steel series started, again, General Zod changed. His thing was, listen, I'm not an evil ruler. I don't want to rule. What I want to do is to do what I was literally genetically bred for. Because again, there was no backstory or history to Krypton. So this started the establishment of, they were one of the most technologically advanced species. They did not practice sexual reproduction. Everyone was genetically engineered for a specific role within their society. So Drew Zod was genetically engineered to be a soldier. And as part of being a soldier, his thing was, I am literally bred to protect and defend my people. So his thing was, I don't necessarily want to be the ruler, but I am the military head. I am the commander of the military forces. This is what has to be done. Now, at some point, would he have been willing to turn over that power? We can speculate, but he was not an empty megalomaniac. His thing was, extreme measures are necessary. They will be painful, Some of them will be violent. Some of them may even be cruel. But Krypton will survive. Our people, our technology, our history, our art, our music, our culture, our society, our very way of life, who we are as Kryptonians, will survive. And General Zod wanted to reestablish the space travel and exploration program. Again, these are all things that Jor-El always sided with the council, sided with the council. And General Zod's position was, why do you allow these small-minded morons to govern our society? You run rings around them, you and the other scientists. So since you lead the scientists and you largely agree with most of the things that I say, why don't we change the way that our planet is run? Again, these are all things that go back to the 80s as far as the stories and the background. General Zod was really never, as Lauren said, he was never actually Superman's enemy. He was Jor-El's enemy. But again, as the story moved along, now he's here, now it's 30, 35 years later, Jor-El is gone, Krypton is gone, so I have to deal with you now, Kal-El.
And for me, that's a really, really huge missed opportunity for writers when it comes to the character. because they focus so much on Zod being Superman's enemy, and it's a who's stronger than the other. All about superpowers, punching, yada yada yada. But the truth of the matter is that Zod is so more nuanced than that, and like I said, it becomes an issue of really looking at the family dynamic between the House of El and the House of Zod. As a matter of fact, what I would always found interesting to me in my head for a story is what would happen if it went so much deeper than that. What if the House of Zod and the House of El is actually the same house? It's just that they're cousins.
It's funny you
with
say
different because we've seen the cousin thing with Supergirl, but she has the same last name as El. But we all know that we've got cousins. We don't all have the same last names. So so the dichotomy of that would be looking at two powerful families that actually come from the same lineage, and one harbors control from a military and power aspect, and the other side dominates from the intellectual and the scientific perspective. And yet, because of that dichotomy, it's the classic situation between the military person and the intellectual, the power hungry and those who have power but want to use it to serve instead of dominate. And Zod is just very interesting because, like he said, he has no interest in ruling. He only has interest in doing what he was bred for, and what that is of course always Krypton first. So even if it's going to another planet, he would disagree with the council because it's like, so let me see if I get this straight. We have an opportunity to get out of here to go to another planet, but because you are all in your fifis about doing something to another planet or the people there, you would rather have us just sit here and die? Really? That's your game plan? No, I'm not co-signing that. You know what I mean? And I can't get mad at him.
Lars,
It's funny that you say that because again, Lord Zod is the father of Drew Zod, General Zod, but
Right.
there was a limited run comic series where Lord Zod was not Drew Zod's father, where his father was Jor-El's father.
Segel.
Yes.
I believe it. Yeah.
So that actually that was a limited alternative run. So the House of El and the House of Zod were bound by blood, making Superman and General Zod family cousins. So it's funny that you bring that up, Lawrence.
I think technically Zod would have been his uncle.
So yeah, uncle, cousins, whatever. I really don't get the whole family thing. Technically, not really, but whatever. But whatever.
So
whatever
the
nomenclature is.
Right. So here's where I wanted to kind of bring up, just based on the overall theme I'm hearing about General Zod and the fact that he is bred to think of Krypton, defend Krypton, and advance Krypton to where it needs to go, as far as the galaxy or anywhere in the universe. So, based on what I'm hearing about how, when the doom of Krypton was pretty much about to happen and everything, his belief was, well, hey, we're going have to we're going to have to shed some weight. Those who can't survive and everything, we're just going to leave them behind and whatnot. But Krypton, we're going to push things forward so it can move to the next level. So that begs the question: as a Kryptonian, was General Zod a eugenist?
Was he Jinx, you said?
Was he a eugenist?
Oh, was
I'm
he
not. I'm. That's
I,
that's a fine line.
yeah, I would
That's a
say so too.
that's a fine line for me because he could fall in either direction. On the one hand, Eugene,
But
I see.
their
I don't
society,
see. I don't see him as a eugenicist so much as I see as a genocidal person.
I would.
but their society practiced eugenics. Again, you have to remember, again, Kryptonians got married and they had sex, but they did not sexually reproduce. They asexually reproduced. Every child was genetically engineered from the genetic material
Except
of
for
both
Kal-El.
parents. So
Well,
they
that depends on what version, though.
Oh,
I know
Fair
what you're
enough.
talking about. I know
okay.
Fair enough.
what you're
Fair
talking
enough.
about, and you're right.
Fair enough.
They as a matter of fact, touching each other bare skin was and thema to them. I mean, it's just I'm not sure if I said that right. Anyway, it wasn't
Anathema.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You weren't allowed to do it. It was absolutely frowned upon as a society as a whole. Like Eisen was about to say, Superman was technically the first one to ever do that.
Yeah, in
Um,
in eons.
Right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But
But
but but but but the eugenist thing, that's like I said, for me, that's tricky because he could easily fall over that line. He really could. But I don't think his goal is to genetically modify or change people as it is to take the people he already has and find them someplace where they can survive. To me, that's something different.
I
right. And he wanted all Kryptonians to survive.
That
His thing
could,
was
yeah.
I don't want the best. I don't want the least. We are all Kryptonians. And I
Right.
was genetically bred and trained to protect and save my people.
And
All
that's
Yeah,
and
of
that's
I
and
them.
that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, because if you're genetically bred to protect your people, that's all of them,
I
regardless of their genetic byproduct. I'm sorry, Eisen, go ahead.
I would say that he just didn't suffer not fools but incompetence.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Mm,
That is
So
very true.
incompetent people that
that's a
stood in the
fair
way
point.
had to go, but it was only, I would say, as a means of necessity early on.
But I I don't disagree, but I slightly differ. I wouldn't say he didn't suffer fools lightly. His thing was he was a soldier. He didn't suffer in action lightly.
Well, that's why I said more incompetence, not fools.
Well, again, not so much incompetence, just inaction. Because again, as a military leader, not every soldier is not equally competent. He had no problem with, well, yeah, well, he wouldn't like incompetence, but his thing was action. If a course, if if something is going to happen, you take action to prevent it, or you take action to make something else happen. You don't sit by and talk about it and dither and hope things work out. That was his thing. No
Right. Well,
inactivity. Take action.
well, yeah,
Because he was a soldier, first, second, and third. He was not, he was not, he did not have a mind for governance. His thing was he's a soldier.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You're on the right path. I think it's the word. Now,
Mm,
speaking as a soldier, I get where you're going. logics. It's just that the word is off. It's not inaction, it's indecisiveness, because
Yes.
indecisiveness gets people killed.
Yes.
So
And
I think that's what you're looking for.
and
Yes.
Lawrence,
Thank you. Thank you.
and Lawrence. So in that situation, wouldn't indecisiveness be incompetence?
No, not necessarily.
It
They're
wouldn't.
not. They're not.
No,
Well,
no,
They're
no,
not
I'm
the
not
same
talking
thing.
about. I'm not. Well, and I
no,
didn't
no.
mean it
I'm
by for Jarrell. I meant
no,
it
no,
more
no,
so
no,
for the
no, no,
Kryptonian
no.
Council.
No, I'm
at that
I'm talking purely as one soldier talking about another soldier. Indecisiveness does not necessarily
time. Okay.
equate to incompetence. It doesn't. It's simply a thing of missed opportunity. Is I mean I can see how you could think that,
Yeah,
and
that's why I was. That's why I just made it
yeah,
specifically about the Kryptonian Council at that time, not
yeah,
so much
yeah,
Jarrell, because Jarrell had proved some competence. He just had indecisiveness on how to
right,
handle the
right, but
situation.
But the
exactly.
council did
So
as well. The council was also indecisive because
right,
Jarrell presented his findings. 'Cause they weren't only his findings. They were well. Again, it depends on which version.
Okay.
Most
right,
versions they were his findings. Other versions they were collective findings. He was not the only scientist who came to these
Oh, okay.
conclusions.
right.
But
That's right.
the ruling the Kryptonian Council was indecisive. It's not that they were incompetent; they were indecisive.
Okay, I got you. I got you. I was thinking it was more of an incompetence thing, but I stand corrected.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Again, it totally depends on the
Which
context.
version?
Right, because not just the
Gotcha.
version, but the context of it.
Okay.
Because from Zod's perspective, indecisiveness gets people killed. It doesn't mean incompetence. It just means you didn't make a decision at the time you should have. That's all it is. It doesn't mean
Gotcha.
you're stupid or you just didn't make the call. From the council perspective, depending on which variation we're talking about,
Mhm.
in the context of it, it the same thing applies to them that applies to Jor-El. But from another aspect of it, based on a different version, your answer is absolutely correct. It is
And
incompetence.
that's probably the one I'm thinking of. That's probably
Yeah,
why.
because it actually is incompetence. Because if a man's coming to you and telling you that the planet's going to blow up, your first thing to do is to make a decision, get all the other scientists together to verify that information. They just ignored it.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
incompetence.
That's
So
the
in
one
that
that I
respect,
remember. So that's probably why I'm
yeah,
thinking of. Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So
I
in
see your
that
point.
respect, you're in that respect, you are absolutely correct. It just again, it's that classic situation.
Right.
There are so many variations that we're all right at the same time. So
Right.
it just depends on who current pop culture decides they want to follow at the moment. So that seems to be the version with Michael Shannon in Man of Steel. And if that's the case, then we have to then the current version that people are accepting would be Eisen's incompetence. You know, I mean, it is what it is.
And I believe there was one earlier too, one or two storylines earlier than that where they were incompetent too. I think I'm right. Wasn't there? Maybe
sorry,
that they borrowed it from Man of Steel.
It depends, Eisen, because
Okay.
again there was the version that General Zod was prior to the Man of Steel series in '86. Then there was different versions of after the death of Superman. There was a during the reign of the Supermen, there was some backstory into Krypton. So that was another version of the High Council of Krypton and their society and how things were conducted. So, as Lawrence said, it depends on which version you're looking at, and it also depends on the person. For some people, all they know is Michael Shannon and the Man of Steel film. There are some people, all they know is the Richard Donner film, Superman, the motion picture. For individuals like myself and Lawrence, we're familiar with most or all of the versions.
Yeah. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing this show and I enjoy doing State of Mail Entertainment, because what it does is with each of us coming from different generations or focus points on characters, it gives people a broader scope of the character as a whole and how rich the history is and how important, no matter what variation you go with, the significance of the character. Because that's one of the true things about knowing whether or not you've got a really good character, that it can survive multiple variations and interpretations over multiple generations. That's huge. That's huge. Because
Yeah,
not
That's
every
true.
not every character can do that.
very true.
Yeah, that is definitely true. So I guess that because now that we've answered that question, where Zod is mainly focused on just Krypton, he's bred to defend Krypton and to help advance it in whatever direction it needs to go. And I know this may hit some strings and all, but I just want to just point out some similarities and everything. So, in a way, with General Zod, one could make the argument that he is essentially what a pro-black or white nationalist want to be in regards of they are bred to defend their type of people or defend their type of species.
I will say this really briefly.
Yeah, you go first. You go first.
I'll say this really briefly. I've said this 1,000 times. I'll say it really briefly. A white supremacist and a pro-black are two sides of the same coin. They want the same things. They just go about them completely differently. They're both largely, well, I'll leave it there because again, those are conversations that are not my conversations. That's the reason why you don't see me anywhere except here. Gentlemen, I passed the floor.
You want to go next, Isaac?
I guess I can. Yeah, I would say they're similar. Just because the only difference really is who they're focused on obtaining power and position for. That's basically about it.
Personally, I think it's a bunch of crock. They wish they could be Zod
And you know
because
what? I
Thank
was
you.
going there. I
Good.
was just about to
Good.
go there
yeah,
because
because it's a bunch of crock. Because to me, here's the thing:
hmm,
Zod's goal is for the survival and beneficial aspects of his people. None of that, none of that has anything to do with him thinking that they're superior to anybody else. It's about nothing but survival, nothing but that. If he has to take over a planet, he'll take over a planet. If he makes people subservient, he makes people subservient. It's not something he's looking forward to. It's just that he's someone who takes advantage of whatever situation is at the moment. From
hmm.
from the other two that you gave, nah, it ain't got nothing to do with survival. It's about superiority.
Exactly. And
and,
ideology and a whole bunch of garbage. So
and
me
that's why
personally, I'm moving on.
and that's where I was getting at because to me, General Zod, like you rightfully pointed out, Lawrence, General Zod wasn't a type of character who is power hungry or is looking to, so to speak, be a ruler and all. Like Kukamasi in the chat, he mentioned how Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z was inspired by General Zod, but those characters are completely different in and of itself because Vegeta, when you do a character development on Vegeta, he's literally the type of cocky character where he will tell you he's bred to be a king.
Well,
Whereas,
he's in the line for it, so
right,
he's got a reason for
right, right.
it.
Whereas General Zod, like you said, he is simply bred to defend Krypton or advance Krypton to whatever direction it needs to go. That's all General Zod cares about. So you could say, in a way, when you look at the character development of Zod, he's actually more in depth in regards of he's a lot more selfless than you would say kind of like a Lex Luthor, where Lex Luthor is all about individualism.
Well, see,
And oh, go ahead, Lawrence.
well, okay, and you're gonna have to forgive me because I know who it is, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But the best analogy of Zod is there was a Roman emperor in the later days of the empire where he would actually take over as emperor, get the job done, and leave. Someone else would come in and they'd run it. Something would go wrong. Only he can fix it. The people would call him back to service. He would come back. He would get the job done. And when it was done, he'd leave.
Yeah, I
Was
remember
that
He
that.
did he did that 3 or 4 times, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Was
But
that Nero?
that's who Zod is. That's who Zod is. Zod has never been about power for the sake of power. Zod has never been about politics. Zod has never been about ruling. Zod is only about survival of his people. It is a singular focus and nothing else. If he has to take the reins, he will do so until the mission is done in like true soldier fashion. And once the mission is done, he will hang up his cloak, he will hang up his sword, he will put his guns away, and hopefully he can go have a family. But if he's called back without hesitation for the servitude of his people, he will return. And the same thing will repeat itself. Once it's done, he will put back up the cloak, he will put back up the sword, he will put away the gun. I mean, that's who Zod is. Point blank. I mean, you can't dance around that, and it doesn't make a difference which variation you pick. They've all been portrayed that way. Except for the original. The original was a megalomaniacal for power, but that's 1961. From 1980 something all the way until now, every variation has been about a guy who's only about protecting and serving his people. That's it.
And the important takeaway here is because there are some people, and we know who will only hang on. He's about saving his people. When General Zod talks about saving his people, he means every citizen of the planet of Krypton. Because in his mind, all Kryptonians are his people. I'm going to repeat that. All, ALL, every single person born on the planet of Krypton are his people. Those are
Yeah.
his people.
Mm.
And he has the classic mentality because matter of fact, it even and going with what Logic saying and making it more detail specific, that applies to Jor-El too. Because
It
Yeah.
does.
he could fight with Jor-El every day, all day, but at the end of the day, Jor-El is Kryptonian. I can fight with my brother, but you can't lay hands on him.
And
He would save Jor-El and his family, even though they're diametrically opposed. It would make no difference. He is bred to protect all Kryptonians, whether you agree with him or not.
and also every version, whether it be the early versions when there was no backstory, to the later versions from 86 forward, where they were a genetically engineered society. They didn't have class per se. You were designed, you were genetically engineered to be a soldier, or to be a scientist, or to be a builder, or a laborer, or a teacher, what, or a philosopher. It did not matter. You were a Kryptonian. In the eyes of Kryptonians, everyone was equal. You were just born into a specific role in your life. And every member of Kryptonian society, every person on that planet, was General Zod's charge to protect and save
Yeah.
equally.
hmm Oh, and I found the name of the Roman.
Was it
Uh,
Tiberius?
no, it was Lucius Quintius Centenius.
Okay.
I'll put his name in the back chat and in the main chat.
Cool.
But yeah, that's who because like I said, I couldn't remember his name. But this I think it was like 3 or 4. Hold on a second. First, second. He did it 3 times. He would just come in, get the job done, go back home. That's all. That's all he did.
But
So,
that makes sense. That definitely
mhm.
makes sense. And I definitely like this because we kind of given some historical context as far as with characters and all. And this one's a good comparison in regards of if you want a historical context of what General Zod is and what he was all about, here's a character from the history books that you can look up. And so that that kind of brings a segment where we kind of circle back with this rivalry between Zod and Jor-El, science versus I guess you would say science versus military.
Intellectual
Eh,
versus soldier.
Okay, intellectual versus soldier. So here's something I would ask everybody on the panel and even those in the audience listening in. So, in this essence, knowing what we know about Krypton and what happened to it, was General Zod in the right in regards of the actions he took in regards of saving Krypton?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I
expand. Feel free. Feel free to expand.
Again, it's survival. Look, we have an entire planet of people about to die. I have no interest on sitting around over debating it. I don't. I'm
Mm,
not gonna sit there with Jor-El and the council and anybody else constantly talking over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because let's be real, the council, whether we want to admit it or not, is nothing but a fictional version of Congress. Do
mm,
ooh,
we
wait,
do we really
ooh,
no, but I'm serious. I'm
man.
serious.
But no,
Do
you're
we
right. You're right.
do we want to sit and wait for 2 3 years while the planet's slowly breaking apart for them to make a decision on what to do? No.
yeah.
If I can
And,
add to that, because I definitely cannot expound to that brilliant dissertation. If I can add to it, General Zod was right in what he did. The only place where he was wrong, he broke laws, so he's wrong for breaking laws. He committed murder, so he's wrong for committed
I
murder.
don't know. I got to disagree with you on
Hear
that.
me out. Just hear me out.
Okay.
From a purely intellectual point of view, he was wrong in that he broke laws. So he's wrong in that regard. He's wrong in that he committed murder. He's wrong in those regards. However, this is where I'm saying I am adding to it. He broke laws. He committed murder. However, I believe he was completely justified in his actions because he did it for the greater good of Krypton and all Kryptonians. He took extreme measures, yes, but weigh the balance of those extreme measures against saving the planet. So he may have broken laws and he may have committed murder, but weigh that against the possible survival of the entire planet. So he was right.
um,
Now, you want to go first, Isaac?
I can. I'm going to say yes. Zod was right, especially when you factor in some iterations where you know not only were they wrong about how much time they had left, but they were severely wrong to where they only had a fraction of the time that they thought they had. So the way of wanting you to use military force to enact this change expeditiously, he was completely right about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. He's absolutely right. I just have a little bit with what Logic said, and it's the beginning of it.
Okay.
I get what you're saying about him breaking laws. I get what you're saying about him doing things that from a societal perspective is unforgiving or unacceptable. My the re But however, I challenge that, and here's the only reason I challenge it.
Mhm.
You have a planet breaking up and about to be destroyed. You have an entire civilization and species about to be wiped out. It is no different than war. We can talk all we want to about Geneva Convention and all that other stuff, but atrocities happen for the sake of survival.
I'm not saying I disagree or that I feel he's a little bit wrong. What I'm saying is I understand how some people would feel that what he did was wrong because he broke laws and he committed murder. But my position mirrors yours. In
Okay,
war,
okay.
in war, people die. That's the goal of war.
And
Atrocities
brutally,
happen.
yeah,
Again, that's that's the point of war. Everything that he did was justified. So
right.
for the people who are sensitive and want to hang their hat upon that he broke laws and that he murdered people, to those people, I would say his actions are the reasons why you can now stand in judgment of him. Think
Right,
about
right.
that.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Oh, yeah, so we're on this. Yeah, okay, we're on the same
Yeah.
page. Yeah,
Yes,
you're right.
sir.
You're right.
And I would also say that Zod wasn't just trying to save an entire species. He was trying to say his actions could have possibly saved several species of the planet.
Oh well, that's yeah. Well, that
Oh,
Yeah,
is
yeah, oh
the
yeah, yeah. I mean, he
animal
could have did.
life and the plant life.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, he
yeah.
could have did the Noah's Ark thing in a
And
heartbeat.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is your analogy about the whole war thing. That's another thing too that people fail to realize. It doesn't really matter who started the war. Once it breaks out, both sides are at fault. And the other fact is that only amateurs will give up a killing stroke over issues of morality.
Well, let me just say, let me just say this one thing, and this is a complete sidebar, a segue, whatever. This is my little own personal rant. Maybe it's because I have 3 generations of family who fought in 3 different wars. My thing is this: if you were gonna criticize your government over use of military force, and you're gonna criticize your military, understand this: that very same military is the reason why your backside has the ability to publicly attack your government and your military. Try living in a country where you can't bad talk your government, you can't bad talk your military. Okay? So, rant over.
You don't. Yeah, you don't want me to respond to that.
But that's an interesting point you both brought up because Lawrence, I like the fact you use the analogy of the council, the Kryptonian Council, being synonymous with present day American Congress.
Yeah,
Because I think what most people, especially with the election polls coming up and everything, here's where I think people when they look at General Zod and Superman, especially if they don't look into the back history of General Zod, this is where people kind of make the mistake.
Democrat,
So
Republican.
that too. But
Well, I'm
just the
saying
fact,
Zod would be a conservative, Superman would be a liberal. Let's be real.
right.
Yeah,
And,
it
and,
would.
and what gets me is this. So you had a council where even the intellectual who had the evidence to show that, hey, your planet is on the verge of self imploding in a matter of who knows weeks,
Uh-oh.
months, years, and whatnot. But yet the
Uh-oh.
council is like, we'll just sit on it. We'll deal with it when the time comes. And it shows, and I know some people not gonna like this, but I'm gonna go ahead and show it. It really shows why you should never put trust in a government.
It's and I agree, but it goes deeper than that on a fundamental level because
Mm,
how can I put this? Okay, here's my take on intellectual. Okay, intellect without discipline is offensive to me.
Mm.
mm.
That's my
Very
take
true.
on it.
Very true.
That's my personal take on it. Intellect
Mm.
without discipline is offensive, and I back that up by saying that if you look at who currently calls themselves intellectuals, it's a pseudo intellectualism.
They're just educated.
They it goes even beyond that because it's that classic situation. If I don't do anything, but I keep talking about it as an intellectual, I guarantee job security. Because if you fix it, you have no more job security. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Where someone like Zod, who's a soldier, their entire purpose is about fixing it. It's about getting the mission, completing the mission, and everybody coming home. That's it. There's nothing else in there. We don't care about the officer who gave the order. You understand what I'm saying? And and
Right.
and and and, and that's the problem with the from the intellectual aspect, at least where we're talking with Krypton, and maybe of course the similarities with politics today.
Society.
Thank you. Society today. Everybody just wants to talk but do nothing, even though they know if they don't do anything, it's going to get worse. That is literally the council. of Krypton as well as current politics, because it's never been about fixing anything ever.
It's
which
about hope.
which is exactly
Exactly.
the point, which was exactly, no, excuse me, which was exactly the point that General Zod would have in his discussions with Jor-El. His point was, you lead you lead the scientific order. I lead the military order. We may disagree on how certain things should be done, but we both agree decisive action needs to be taken. You agree. Why the hell are you refusing to take action to save yourself and every other Kryptonian? And that was General Zod's biggest problem.
Yeah. Imagine. Okay, imagine if they all escaped Krypton, and let's
Yes.
say they ended up colonizing the moon. So we have an entire planet of Supermen, right? I'm telling you that the first one that stepped out of order to do something stupid on that planet, Zod would be the first in line to take him down, because that's not why he saved his people. He didn't save them to be tyrants. He saved them to live.
And which brings us back to again, since 1986, when he was no longer a evil megalomaniac. General
Hmm.
Zod from 86 forward was not an evil megalomaniac. His purpose was the defense and protection of Krypton and all of its citizens, every single last person. He was not about, and he was not about being a monster or being an evil person. So
Yeah.
he's not evil. He's not an enemy.
Yeah.
His whole purpose, his whole philosophy is, I want my people protected. I want my
Yep.
people safe. As long as my people are protected and my people are safe, you literally don't need me to do anything. I'm here to protect my
Yep.
people against any and all threats. So
Yep.
Krypton was destroyed. We've all relocated. We're on wherever we are, a new planet, this moon, wherever the hell we are. Guess what I get to do as the leader of our military? Keep training new soldiers and staying in the background, protecting you from threats when they come.
Yep. And I'll tell you something else too. As a matter of fact, to bring the point home, that it's more about Zod with Jor-El than it is him with Clark.
Always.
Because if you remember the story for the man who has everything, when Mongol put that black orchid on Clark and he had a dream of living out a lifespan on Krypton
Correct.
as it survived, the
Hmm.
same thing was done in comics with Zod, and his dream was practically the exact same thing as Clark.
Boom.
It had
That's
nothing to do with him conquering the universe. They weren't flying over the place, destroying other planets or people, or trying to be in control. It was literally the same story. Krypton survived. He was happy. You know what I'm saying? He served. He retired. Had a family. The whole 9 yards. He's literally the same. So, like I said, we always talk about him being the antagonist to Clark's protagonist status. But the truth of the matter is, he's not really a Superman villain. He's a Jor-El villain.
and that's the point that I just wanted to bring up. General Zod is not Superman's enemy. General Zod and Kal-El, Superman, disagree on ideology. They are ideologically opposed on certain viewpoints, but they're not actual enemies. But that distinction and that nuance gets lost upon the masses because every time you see a good guy, there has to be a bad guy, and it's pure binary thinking.
Yeah,
Which brings
yeah.
us to this. I'm going to stay quiet because this speech brilliantly
Epic.
encapsulates General Zod.
It was epic.
Oh, this is my favorite. This is my
Yeah,
favorite, man.
my
This is
favorite
my
as well.
favorite.
Well, I mean, you could thank Lodge's Fighter because he brought up the ideology between
Oh,
General Zod and Superman. And shout out to Isaac Saba because he presented this to me in an email. So I was like,
I,
yeah, we're gonna
and,
play this. But
and
you go
might I suggest that you just play the audio that way the stream don't
okay,
get paused?
not a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
So let me do this just to show just us. All right, so fair use, but here we go.
Look at this.
could have built a new Krypton in this squalor, but you chose the humans over us. I exist only to protect Krypton. That is the sole purpose for which I was born. And every action I take, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the greater good of my people. And now, I have no people. My soul. That is what you have taken from me. I'm going to make them suffer, Cal. These humans you've adopted, I will take them all from you one by one.
You're a monster, Zod. And I'm gonna stop you.
There's only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do. I was bred to be a warrior, Cal. Trained my entire life to master my senses. Where did you train? On a farm?
All right, gentlemen, your thoughts on that scene?
Yes.
I love making Man of Steel. I actually looked at Man.
Sorry.
It's
Please
all right.
continue.
Yes. That whole dialogue there in the beginning was awesome, and then where it was ending there too, with the line, "Where'd you
Where did you
learn?"
train on a
Yeah,
farm?
on the farm. Yeah, but the other thing that I took from it, because seeing the movie, was also that once there was no longer going to be any other Kryptonians, and Zod made that speech, he was actually looking to die because he no longer had a purpose. Because now there was no reviving Krypton. Krypton was going to be gone. It was done. I actually think he was looking for Kal-El to actually kill him in this moment. He just wasn't going to give it to him. But he's gonna make him earn it because that is who he is. But because there was once the codex he wasn't going to give up the codex, and when Cal destroyed the ship with all those registered citizens, as he said, it was over with. And I think in that moment he wanted to die.
Well, I
disagree, but
no, you first, Logic. Go ahead.
I disagree. Every fiber of General Zod's being would refuse that thought. He laid it out. He said, either you die or I die. It's a fight to the death. But he did not want for Kal-El to kill him. He was not suicidal, as you said, to make him work for it. His thing was, again, it's either you or me. I am going to kill you for what you took away from me. The next thing, under a red sun, Superman is no match for any member of the Kryptonian military. When he fought Faora, and he's much more powerful than Faora, she whooped his ass because she's a trained hand-to-hand fighter. Superman is not. He's never learned.
Just have to throw that in there. Please continue.
Every time General Zod fights Superman in hand-to-hand combat, it is no contest as in terms of fighting skill. What Superman has is more power because he's been under a yellow sun for decades, whereas General Zod and Faora and his other soldiers under him have not. So, what you saw, and I just want to say this, as I said in the back chat, for me, the soundtrack of this entire film is Hans Zimmer's magnum opus. It is his best work. It is a phenomenal soundtrack. But with all of that said, Zod laid out who he is and everything that he does, every action, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the protection of Krypton and every Kryptonian. Now, I don't have that anymore. You murdered your own people for the sake of these people here. There's another scene where it's the scene where General Zod enters Kal-El's mind, and he said, listen, you have a choice here to make. It's either them or your own people. You're not human. You've lived among them for 30 years, but you are Kryptonian. You have the ability to save your people. What is it going to be, Cal?
But it's more than that. It's more than that. Because I think you and Eisen are right in a 50-50 kind of way. Because I do think that to a large degree, Zod did want to die. And it's not just because of the fact that he lost his purpose. It's not just the simple fact that he lost his people, but the sheer level of anger that all of that happened because the very people he was supposed to protect was destroyed by one of the very people he was supposed to protect.
That's a good point.
That had to be massive. I mean, that had to be a massive mind screw.
You know what?
Because like I said, if his entire purpose is for the protection and defense of Krypton, another Kryptonian literally destroyed Krypton again for the second time. Because not only did he lose the planet, now he lost the people in addition to the planet. And in both instances, because of a group of other Kryptonians who he has sworn to protect, has done it. I mean, dude, that's got to be a mind screw to the ultimate.
That's an excellent point.
And not only that, also keep in mind, the last time he was on Krypton, the Science of Council was the governing body, which was from the House of El. So in General Zod's mind, seeing Superman is the sole reason why Krypton is no longer around.
Everything. The House of El took everything.
Everything.
And here's what I was going to say. From the moment when Kal-El boarded that ship and Zod went into his mind, he knew that it was going to be a fight to the death before that. Because when he entered his mind, he knew that this would be one where he he could not just beat Kal-El and leave him alive, because
Mhm.
he would not stop. He would not stop coming for him. So he knew the only way that it was going to stop is if he killed him.
Mhm.
Which is why I said, that he wanted to die, because once every, like you brought up, the emotional turmoil of how his whole purpose was taken from him. He literally had nothing left to live for.
Well, it's the fact that it's the fact of, like I said, he already lost Krypton to a bunch of Kryptonians who didn't
Right.
do what they were supposed to.
And at the House of
So
L.
so so yeah, exactly. So in his
Twice.
mind, yeah. So in his mind, it's the House of El and the Kryptonian people who have caused the loss of their planet and most of its people. And then the few that was left, once again, another Kryptonian and from the House of El again took what little he had left. Dude, that's an ultimate mind screw. No, seriously.
No, no,
That's like you've got four brothers and you wake up
don't
one morning and one
don't
of them
mistake
decided
me.
to kill your parents. Dude,
Don't
how do you rationalize that?
don't mistake me. I'm not laughing at you. I'm
Oh, I
laughing.
know.
I'm laughing because that is a brilliant point. That is an absolutely brilliant point.
That's insane. The
Mhm.
very people he has set to protect are the very ones who destroyed everything he was built to protect. To him, like I said, that's got to be the biggest mind screw there's ever been.
Yeah.
And the extra insult to injury is it all came from the same freaking house.
The House of L.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that same bloodline. Yes.
Dude, you know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Like, dude, you're a Kryptonian, bro. Look, I
Yeah.
get that you want to protect human beings in the whole 9 yards, but they shouldn't be chosen over us. We're you.
Lawrence, I'm sure you can appreciate this, but I have always been fascinated how much this story mirrors the story of Osiris, Set, and Horus.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Oh,
I've
hands down.
always been
You
fascinated
can't.
with that. It's the
Oh no,
same
you can't miss
story.
that Egyptian analogy. You cannot. You cannot miss
I'm
that.
not gonna lie, I don't know enough there, but where I was gonna go with it too was to Superman's side, in the fact that, okay, I don't know, it's kind of like, you win the lottery and then you got family members you never knew about coming up talking about, hey, cuz.
I
Mm,
don't get the analogy.
You kind of lost
Okay.
me.
Well, okay. When Zod's saying you should pick us, but I ain't never known y'all.
oh, you're talking about in regards to
You got relatives
Superman.
coming out of woodwork talking about,
You,
hey,
you,
we're family.
so you
But
use
I
the
ain't never
analogy.
seen you. But all of a sudden I'm supposed to do stuff in family's best interest when I don't know you, but I got this family over here
So
that
you
I've been
using the
around my
analogy.
whole life.
So Eisen, you're using the analogy of where he, obviously you could say he's more closely related to Superman than the humans, but you're saying, with Superman, he's been on Earth and everything and all, and he's been around the humans, and then here comes General Zod. Superman should automatically have, in General Zod's mind, he should have been teaming up with General Zod since they're the same bloodline, somewhat. And you could say
Right.
Kryptonians and all, but pretty much the same bloodline. I was like, hey, I'm a distant relative or whatnot. I haven't known you in so many years, but automatically we should team up because we're family, we're blood. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see the analogy.
No. I get the analogy. It's the lottery ticket part threw me off.
Yeah, that was a
Well,
bit. That threw me off.
hey,
That threw me way
the
off. But
thing is,
I see
hey,
your
look,
point.
when folks get money, that's when everybody want to come out the woodwork. Hey, I'm
Right.
your cousin, right?
Kind of like, I think a better analogy would be like the NFL draft and the NBA draft. When that person become a first round draft pick, all of a sudden, all of his relatives that he had no clue he was related to just come out of nowhere and like, hey, fam, you should help me out and everything because, hey, we're related.
Well, okay. I think I have a more. I think I can come up with a different analogy. You were raised in a middle class blue collar family. Now you're 30 years old. Someone walks up to you, hands you a photograph and a piece of paper, and says, "Look, listen, we're family. So what I'm going to need you to do is I plan to tear down this entire neighborhood where you grew up and you lived. However, your family with us, and we are billionaires. So leave them alone and leave that existence alone that you've known for this much better existence that you come from."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting it. I get it. Yeah. Whichever one you use, yeah.
Right, either
But
way,
see,
yeah.
look, listen. Though the bottom line thing here is this: General Zod's position was this: Kal-El, you are a Kryptonian. We are Kryptonians. We can't live with these people. Number one, we can't breathe their atmosphere. So we're going to change the atmosphere of this planet. If any of them live, which they probably won't, that's fine. But guess what? You are Kryptonian. Your people, your race, we will live on. Our technology, our art, our history, our culture, everything that we were Krypton will be reborn. Forget
Yeah.
about that existence that you've had. You owe this to your family, to your father, to your mother, to your entire species of Kryptonians. What's the problem here? And that
Yeah.
was General
Oh,
Zod's point.
And just for the sake of argument, that's such a massive plot hole in that story.
my bad. I
It
was
is,
also
of
getting
course it is,
Yeah.
but
I was also getting ready to say, I forgot, we also have to do this atop your corpse.
Huh?
Because if you remember correctly, when that shit was leaving, he said, "I am going to harvest the codex from his bones."
Oh, that's right. He
He
did.
was
Yeah.
going to have to die to do this.
Yeah, he did. He sure did. But like I said, that's why for me, that scene with that speech from Michael Shannon and
Yeah,
the earlier part when we saw Krypton is really the only thing that stands out to me for that film. And I'm not trying to do a
right,
film
right.
critique or anything. It's just that the plot hole was so huge because you say you have to terraform for Kryptonians to be able to live, but you're looking at Cal who's been here for 30 years.
Well,
And then,
technically, he
and
didn't
then,
say
and
to
then,
live. Actually,
and
he did
then
not say to live. Technically,
wait,
because
did
whenever
he say
no,
something about not being able to
when
breathe
they
the
were in
atmosphere?
when he went to the ship, when he went to that
Uh,
ship to get the registry of citizens, he said that we didn't. Why should our people have to suffer like your son has for these years to be able to live, to be able to learn to adjust to how to live here? So he
oh, okay.
knew they weren't going to die. He's just
Mm,
like, well, look, we don't want to have to suffer. Look, we don't want to catch the flu to do
mm, yeah.
it's
Okay.
still a plot hole though. No, you're right. You're right.
But it was
It
a
is a
plot
plot
hole, but he
hole.
did not say die though. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It is a plot hole, but yeah, you're right. You're right.
But like I said, as far as odds concerned, man, my answer is the same as
Yeah.
as it was with the poll. I agree 100% with the
But yes, I
philosophy.
agree. I still agree.
Yeah.
I don't have issue with it.
So that now brings to the last segment here, and that is the can you survive in this villain's world?
No,
And I said you said no.
no, look, I'm not Kryptonian. He terraformed the planet. No.
This just came out swinging. Okay, but let's say if you were Kryptonian,
Oh, well,
could
then
you?
that's a different story. Yeah, then I could.
All right. Okay. So Lawrence, your take. Could you survive in General Zod's world if you was Kryptonian?
I'll give you both.
Hmm.
If I was a human, yes, but only under the caveat that Zod is in charge. Because again, Zod's purpose is just for the survival of his people, not to subjugate another people. So if it was a planet where we all live side by side, yada yada yada, no issues, everybody's happy, hunky dory, I could. Probably spend most of my life being jealous I can't do what they do. From the perspective of being a Kryptonian myself, that's where it gets a little iffy because I
Hmm.
fall right down the middle. I'm an intellectual from Jor-El's perspective, and I'm a military veteran from Zod's perspective. The question is who I would align with the most, and whatever choice I make would pretty much define how I would be treated. To be honest with you, and Zod's position as a military veteran who's been betrayed by pretty much every intellectual he's ever come across with, if I chose that side, he'd have a problem with me.
Ooh, interesting. Good sir, Logic. Your thoughts?
My only issue somewhat speaks to what Lawrence just said, because for me, I agree with General Zod. My issue is that he's too extreme. General Zod is like General Patton or Field Marshal
Ooh.
Rommel. He is an extreme soldier. He is the one you want to fight and win a war because they will win the war for you. The problem is they are the person, they are the hammer that you break the glass case, you take them out when you need them, and then when you no longer need them, you put them back in the case. The problem is they can only live in a world of conflict and war and combat. And after everything that has happened, I would I I would have no problem under the yoke of Zod, with the understanding that at some point he hands that yoke over to someone more intellectual, more at that really someone more suited to governance, because Zod
Right,
is not suited for governance. He is
right,
he is suited for what he was literally biologically created and bred for. That's
right.
that's my only issue with living
And
Yep.
under
And
Zod.
and the thing about that, just to add on to what Logic was saying, that's where it goes back to what I was saying, the difficulty in Zod being able to do that. Because
Hmm.
again, every time he's been betrayed by the very people who would be the ones to fill that role of moving the people into the direction it needs to be after he's done. And you
Hmm.
also have to take in consideration there's a little bit of him that's a whole lot like MacArthur in the sense that
Mm.
in the sense that old soldiers don't die, they just fade away.
Also, if
And I think that's one of the reasons. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go real world here for a second.
mhm,
I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of my brothers, a lot of my military brothers, veterans, etc., and so on, that's where there seems to be difficulty in adjusting, because some of us come back PTSD and all that, and they can't
Hmm.
let the soldier aspect go. And then there's the other ones of us who come to an understanding that every soldier eventually has to put his weapons away. He can move into a warrior mentality and concept. He's already done what he's supposed to do. He can't be that soldier anymore. And I think that might be something with Zod.
bingo, that's the exact point that I was getting at, because that was the point. That was the problem that General Patton had, and he would have had it not been for his untimely death. But you know, the the extreme soldier is the best soldier that you want for war, but they are not suited for peacetime or for governance. So
yeah,
you don't want them in a position of governance.
Oh yeah, it's that classic situation. Once the genie's out of the bottle, man.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and
And the thing about, General Zod, again, you could live under, I could live in his, as I said, I could live in his world, yes, under his yoke for a limited amount of time, with the
Right.
understanding that he's going to hand that yoke over because he is not suited for governance. I don't see, again, people who are not familiar with all of the backstory and all of the history, I don't see him becoming a tyrant. I don't. Unfortunately, what I could see him possibly wanting to wage war with another planet for their resources, because that's all he knows.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. That's absolutely true. Because, like I said, it's not something he wants to do. It's something he has to do.
He has to.
And
It's
and and that and
literal.
that and that's only in the most extreme circumstances. Like I said, I don't think he had any intention of subjugating any other people or species.
Right.
But like I said, that's him. Now, if he
Right.
decided to hand over the reins to someone else who's military, then we might have a problem.
That's the
But if you
thing. That
had, but if you hand it over to intellectuals who are more along the lines of the House of L, everybody, whether you're Kryptonian or not, might have a decent chance of being able to live harmoniously. So,
And
and it's funny that you say that because his
oh, I'm
second
sorry.
in command.
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Hold on, because I think we just cut off Eisen like 2, 3 times, didn't we?
Oh well, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, and because on your point about him, I can't see him handing over power just because I think he would feel that I think he would think that everyone else is too indecisive to be able to utilize their leadership position correctly.
Mm,
Funny enough, his second in command is Feora, but Feora, whether it be because if you know Feora from the comic books, oh my God, Feora is the monster that people think Zod is. She is
yes,
very
yes.
extreme. She is quick
Now
to
that's the
anger.
that now Fiora going back to you, Sigma. That's the eugenist. I'll
Yes,
tell you that right now.
yes,
Okay, all
That's the
right.
yes.
eugenist. Yeah, Fiora.
And
That's Fiora for real, for real.
she would rule with an iron fist. The only thing that holds her back is General Zod. It's funny enough that she's his second in command. Feora is Zod's attack dog
And his lover,
in
because in
some,
the
in
because
some.
in the yeah, because in comics and some of the variate most of the variations, they're intimate with each other and they have a son named Chris or something along those
Hmm.
lines.
In
So
one version that I'm aware of, but if there's
okay,
more then there's more.
okay.
That's wow. Interesting. It's a female that's on the extreme, but that's a subject for another day.
That doesn't surprise me
No,
though,
it doesn't surprise me at all. Women are
because
actually pretty ruthless, but that's me. Never mind.
and
Well,
it's not just a ruthless thing either. It's also the aspect that look, if Zod's entire purpose is to protect Kryptonians as a whole, then it makes sense to me that Fiora, as a female who can make more Kryptonians, yeah, I could see her being more than him. So I
Mm,
mean, because progeny has to come from the female aspect, at
yeah,
least from the birthing perspective.
and
So I could get why she would be a bit more extreme.
and since we're going there, it's only one iteration because the same way that General Zod has had several iterations, Feora has gone through several iterations. There was one iteration where Feora was so extreme that she was a man hater. She did not like
Mhm.
men. The only
Yeah,
man who
yeah,
she respected was General Zod.
that's correct.
She looked down upon men, and if had her way, would actually subjugate men. But again, that was one.
Including
iter-
Kryptonian men.
Yes, especially,
I
wow.
figured that. Somehow I figured
especially.
that would be the
But
case.
again, let's be clear. Let's be perfectly clear.
Just
That was
one.
one
Right.
iteration. For every
Mhm.
other iteration, the man-hating aspect is not there.
Right.
Everything else is though. She is extreme. She's General Zod's attack dog, and
Mhm.
she is cruel,
Mhm.
very
Yeah,
cruel.
I could definitely say from the animated portion, what you just described her, that's what she was. She was ruthless. She followed orders from General Zod, no matter what and everything.
Yeah.
And she was tough as nails.
But the
But
biggest, but you got to understand the biggest word that matters the most when it comes to her that Logic said was cruel, because I can tell you whether it be animation, comics, or movies, in every iteration, that cruelty was always there. That was
She's
never removed.
cruel, cruel.
Everything else would move this that way, etc. But there was always
Savage.
cruelty,
She was
always cruelty.
savage, man.
Yeah,
See,
and
see
now,
one.
like I said, it doesn't make a difference what iteration, what type of media. That's one aspect of her they will never take away. She has always been cruel.
She's always been cruel. Feora is the person that, okay, there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of people standing in front of an objective that we need to take out. Feora's first instinct and first order: kill them all, get to our objective. Period. End of story.
Yep. Because I
Not
tell
even
you,
a thought.
if Michael Shannon's Zod had pulled it off and actually converted Earth into the new Krypton and brought all the people back,
Mhm.
I'm telling you, that would have changed nothing with her. She would have still been cruel to her people.
Yep.
And I think whether it be male or female, and I think she would also, and she definitely would have been cruel to anybody human wise that was left.
Yeah. She
They're,
was.
they're just they're toys. They're playthings to her.
They are. Antra Truow. She
Mhm.
captured Feora perfectly because that's who she is, a loyal soldier who is brutal, and she is cruel, and she is extreme.
And I tell you what, those scenes in Smallville, the cold stare in her eyes, man, she had that
Yeah,
down, man.
yeah,
Golly.
and
It was
and
ice cold, boy.
yeah. And I'll tell you something else too. What's her name? Oh, I can't believe I forgot her name like that. Sarah Douglas. There you go. Who played Fiora in the Christopher Reeve Superman 2.
Mhm.
She was also perfect, but the problem with her is that they moved it from cruelty to being sadistic.
Well, she was also the one and only iteration of Feora where she's a man hater.
Yeah. But they
And
made her absolutely sadistic. And
yeah,
that's one thing Fiora is cruel, but I've
but
never
she's
seen her be
never
sadistic.
sadistic.
With the
She
exception of Sarah Douglas playing that character.
Yes,
Yeah.
Feora will kill without hesitation, but she doesn't make you suffer.
hmm Yep, that's correct. And Sarah Douglas's version loves suffering.
Yes. You know,
They love she yeah.
she was that child who grew up torturing animals.
Oh yeah, plucking feathers. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Man, we're,
That
we're,
and,
we're
and,
gonna we're
and
gonna
that's
have to
and
put
that's
her. I was gonna say we're gonna have to put her on the voting block of when people would like to have her as the villain of the month. Cause my goodness, that's
oh yeah,
Feora?
Fiora. Fiora and like I said, and Logic said it perfectly. Everything she is what people think Zod is, but he's not. Zod is
Exactly.
very calculated, very meticulous, very aware, and he's also aware of Fiora's aspects too.
Of course.
That's why he uses her the way he does. For him, when he chooses to sick her on something, that means he wants complete and utter destruction. There's no ifs,
Yeah.
ands, or buts.
Exactly.
If not, he's willing to do the work himself or use the other guy. Is it Uax? I can't remember his name.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I
that.
can
I
never
think
remember his
there's
name.
been different ones in different iterations. I think.
Yeah. But
you know.
if he wanted to, if Zod wanted to be absolutely positively destroyed overnight, he would send her.
He would
You know,
send Feora.
I'm gonna make this comment, but we're not gonna expand on it and everything. I'm just gonna make this comment, and then we just continue where we left off. But Isaac Sama will catch on to this. I think the dudes in the Manosphere would love a woman like Fiora.
Oh no, you didn't.
Oh, I'm done, man. I'm done.
That's what I said. We moving on. We moving on. We
I'm not
moving on.
saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing because that's going to open up everything.
I have
We
no
moving
comment.
on.
Wow.
We moving on. Moving
Listen,
on.
you can leave those Manosphere, those Boyosphere clowns right where they are.
And I just want to say one thing, and it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing. I just want to make a point that I find it fascinating that after he says that, Doc Phoenix shows up in the chat. I'm leaving it at that.
Yes, it is very. As I said, Feora is General Zod's attack dog, and he holds her leash, and he knows people don't understand. Feora is the monster that they think General Zod is, but he's not. It's Feora. and she would actually be a whole lot worse if not for her devotion to and his firm leadership over Feora, because she is fiercely loyal and dedicated to General Zod.
Yeah, because if it was, we got to be real. She's a sociopath.
Yes, she
Without
is.
without him keeping her in check, man, it's over.
She is the monster that people think Zod is. It's not. It's
Yeah,
Feora.
Zod was not. I'm just based on what I remember from the animation and definitely from you all's interpretation from the comics and the movies and everything. Yeah, Zod. I'll put it like this: Zod is the type of person who you actually want them on your side. As long as you're not giving him problems, he will defend you. Especially if you're a Kryptonian, he will defend you nonetheless. Whereas Feora, yeah, there was a part of me when I was watching her in the animated series. I was like, you know, this woman here, you got to have her on a short leash. Otherwise, she could literally go from planet to planet like Brawley
No,
and just destroy everything.
not
Let
not a short leash, but have her dangling from the leash
well,
just long enough. I'm serious. Just yeah.
let me say this: a perfect encapsulation of who and what Feora all is. When General Zod in the film Man of Steel, Zod turns command over to Feora because he wants to go and retrieve the scout ship. When the C-17 is coming to attack the Black Zero, instead of sending one of the other soldiers, Feora deals with it herself because she wants to murder everyone on that plane for the audacity they think that they can attack the Black Zero. That is who Feora all is.
Yeah, to send a message.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
she
yeah. Agreed.
enjoys killing. She's
Yeah.
cruel.
hmm And like I said, her being with Zod allows her the opportunity to indulge in those things. If you
Ooh,
remember Man of Steel, Zod didn't go after Superman the first time. He sent
No,
Fiora.
that's true.
Yeah.
And that should tell you a lot.
exactly.
That should tell you a lot.
Hey, like I said, whenever that shit was leaving, he told him, "I am going to harvest the codex from his corpse."
Yep.
So, hey,
Yep.
Man.
But like I said, the one from the Man of Steel was cruel. But Sarah Douglas from Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, like I said, it was sadistic. So I was a little. It was interesting to watch, but it was still a little off for me.
Yeah.
Because being cruel, I could see that because as a soldier, you do become cruel. You become desensitized to certain things.
Right.
But
Right.
when you start being sadistic, you start moving over into some hardcore psychopathic issues. Now, being a now the Fiora we know is a sociopath, but that's a whole lot different than a psychopath. That means there's a psychotic break somewhere, and I just didn't like that take on it.
Oh, and also to bring this back to one of my favorite topics, and for you as well, Sigma. Look at the best generals of the war: Montgomery, Patton, and Rommel. None of them were sadistic.
Mm-mm.
They were pure soldiers.
Yeah.
They were
Uh,
not made for governance, but they were
look,
not
look,
sadistic.
Yeah, look at the last quote Doc put up for Fiora. Sums it up.
And that's
yeah,
Feora. And
yeah.
she meant that. When she said it, she means it. Because if you know Feora from the comics, if given the chance, if Zod were to take off the leash, Feora will kill millions.
That's why in the story they had to deal with her before they dealt with Zod.
Right.
Because if he had like snapped Zod's neck before getting to her, oh, it was on.
Yeah.
Oh, it was on.
Man.
She's
So
yeah. She's she's
Yeah,
just going ham, man.
yeah,
we'll definitely put her up to the voting poll because that's what I'm using for the community tab for the fans to vote what month they would like to have the villain of the month. But just based on this conversation, yeah, we're going to put her on the voting booth
No,
sometimes.
yeah, no,
That's a good one.
that's totally cool because I would like to get into some female villains, to be honest with you.
Right? Yeah.
Well, when we had this conversation, there was one that I brought up. Unfortunately, I know only myself and Lawrence Guy know of Blake Seven, Supreme Commander Servalan. So
Yeah,
it's kind
yeah,
of pointless to have this discussion
Mm.
when we're the only two who know about her. So
yeah, yeah.
We can catch on. We youngest. We do a
Well, to
lot of
be
research.
you would have to
to be
watch Blake
fair,
Seven.
before we even get to Blake Seven, we got a lot of good ones in both Star Trek and Star Wars.
That's
Yes.
true. That's true.
Star Trek and Star Wars.
In fact,
Who?
just
Commander Shavanek, the Romulan commander from the
Well,
Enterprise incident.
that's one, and then you got the other one when they did the kind of dramedy comma with Kirk and Spock. What was it, Cat's Paw, with the chick who who was supposed to be
I
a
gotta
witch.
finish up.
Oh
I
yes,
gotta
yes,
finish
yes,
up.
yes, yeah. You know what? That was probably my least favorite episode of the original series.
Oh,
I
it's
gotta
goofy as all get out.
I gotta finish up the original series. I got
What? Listen, you are not a fan. If you
No,
do
no,
not,
no, 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 no.
What?
That's not true. He called me first, and I suggested he start with Enterprise because it's actually a prequel to the original.
okay,
So that's on me. That's why I
Yeah.
did that. Because
Eh,
instead of series order, I wanted to give him the chronological history order, so
I
that way
got
he's
you.
not jumping back and
Yeah.
forth between
Okay,
series.
okay, I
Yeah.
got you. I
So
got
that
you.
that was me. That was
I
all
got
me.
you.
I'll take the hit
Yeah.
for that.
I okay.
all
I
right, all
stand in.
right. So
Okay,
so
so
we,
who was the first captain of the Starship Enterprise?
Well,
Oh,
you asked.
he's asking me, but I've never claimed to be a Star Trek historian like y'all.
Okay, all right,
But
okay.
who's
You good? You
wait,
just
which
that was
class? Which
it was
class
the
of Enterprise?
yeah. See, there you go.
Okay, well,
See.
well,
Because if
good
you
on
wanted to
you.
go there, technically, it'd
Now
be
that
Jonathan
right
Archer.
there, that's
Good on
that's
you.
let me just say this real quick. That's my little brother.
Good on you. The fact that you know that there was one before the Constitution class, which would be Captain Jonathan Archer. Good on you. Now the Constitution class, the first captain was Robert April, then Christopher Pike, then Captain James T. Kirk.
Coming in
Good on
here
you.
trying to take my little brother down. Are you trying to disrespect the House of Guy?
Kneel before
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm
Oh.
not as well versed in the Star Trek lore as I am Star Wars, but eventually I will get there.
right on, right on. So okay, we come to the last segment, final segment with the final thoughts and everything. This is a great discussion. I mean, I've learned a lot tonight, and I think everybody else has as well. So I'm going to start with Isaac Sama since he was the last to join us. Your final thoughts, good sir.
I just want to say, these I love these conversations we have here with these villains, diving into their psyche and seeing what makes them tick and why they do what they do, how it affects their environment or their surrounding environment. These each one gets better and more intricate each time. I really like it, and thanks for it.
Awesome, awesome. Logic Finest, good sir. Your final thoughts.
Yes, I enjoy it because good good writing creates good characters, and there has to be emotional development. There has to be flaws. There has to be nuances. There has to be depth. And kneel before Zod.
And Mr. Terrific, Lawrence Guy, your final thoughts.
I'm gonna pick up off what Logic said about good characters make good stories, and good stories make great conversation like we had today. I've said it before. I'll say it again, man. This is my favorite time of the month. Between this and the State of Mail Entertainment, man, this is I just love being around my geeky nerd pop culture brothers, man. I'm good. I'm good. Like I said, this is my space. I'm cool. I'm home. Not to sound all Captain America like, but I'm home. You know, so I'm good. Zod, great character. Great conversation as always, man. Um, I'm still waiting for um how can I put this? Truism. Where's my money?
Oh my
If I
goodness.
can, if I can interject one last thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
Krypton had a moon. It's called Wegthor. Brilliant scientist was directly responsible for the destruction of that moon. If you remember one of the early scenes of the film Man of Steel, up in the sky there was a planet broken in half. That was Krypton's moon, Wegthor. Jack Saw, the criminal, was directly responsible for that.
That's
He was
right. That's right.
he was General Zod's scientist on the Black Zero. He's the scientist who discovered that the codex was in Kal-El's um, DNA strands. He was the scientist who was responsible for putting Zod inside Kal-El's brain. Now, in the 90s cartoon, which Sigma referenced, we see Jack Saw much more than we ever see Zod with that one-eye monocle who always escapes from the Phantom Zone with Feora. We see that's Jack Saw. We rarely actually see Zod. So when you have a scientist who is unscrupulous, who blows up moons, so just because there's a scientist, so my point where I'm bringing up Jack Saw is that General Zod already has an inherent distrust of scientists because of the House of El. And when he saw what Jack Saw did, even though he has him around him, he's under his command now. He's become one of his acolytes. But General Zod does not trust the scientific community of Krypton.
Yeah, he doesn't like Jax at all in any capacity. He considers him just a lackey, for lack of a better term.
Yes,
And if he didn't have need of his skill set, I think Zod would snap his neck in a heartbeat.
right. He's a useful annoyance.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think if I had to guess, just looking at the way that Trinity plays out, Fiora's waiting for Zod to give her the nod to take out Jax. And I think Zod made a deal with Fiora. Yeah, you can torture him before you do it.
Of course, because
I can see that. I mean, I can literally see that.
because she would thoroughly enjoy it. And here's another thing. It's hinted at in the comics that from time to time Zod allows Feora to indulge her more cruel and sadistic
Yes,
nature
yeah.
to
That showed up
keep
a couple of times.
to keep her your attack dog has to have the occasional meal to be
Got to give him a
happy.
bone.
Yeah,
Got to give him a bone every now and then.
you have to.
Man. Oh my goodness, that's gonna be something. So, just want to thank everybody in the chat and on the panel for joining us on this month's discussion. Now, next month, for those who are more of the Marvel fans and everything, definitely want to tune in for next month's Villain of the Month because we will be delving into Dr. Victor Von Doom for the month
Yes.
for the month of November. So for all the Marvel people out there, go ahead, spread the word. They're probably like, well, they did DC today, so we're not going to stop it. Okay, fair enough. But next month, we got the Marvel villain, Victor Von Doom, who is going to be our discussion. And definitely, I think we're going to find some interesting aspects with him like we did with General Zod tonight. So definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in. Until next time, thanks for watching the villain of the month.
The villains. For every good guy, there must be the bad guy. Society looks upon villains with disdain because they refuse to follow the rules. But are these villains really bad or misunderstood? Are they truly out for chaos and blood? Or are they more willing to get out of their comfort zones than the average Joe? Join us for our Villain of the Month discussion. We will break down their philosophy, their past, and their psychology. And then you decide for yourself if these villains are humans or if they are monsters.